Welcome everyone, and the next session we have for you today is Dr. Marcell Vollmer, and he is a global partner and director at Boston Consulting Group, focusing on digital transformation for procurement and supply chain. Previously, Marcell was Chief Innovation Officer at Celonis, being responsible for defining and driving innovations and digital transformation for customers globally. A thought leader in procurement, supply chain, finance, and shared services. His expertise lies in defining digital strategy for customers by delivering transformation success and process productivity gains. Before that, he was Chief Digital Officer in SAP's Cloud Business Group and COO for SAP Ariba, where he successfully developed and led global business development, go-to-market, sales operations, and enablement. Prior to that, Marcell was Chief Procurement Officer of SAP and held various leadership roles, including restructuring, improving project efficiency, and execution of global programs in finance, procurement, sales, human resources, and post-merger integration. So clearly the right man to speak to us today. So welcome, Marcell.
Scott, many thanks for the nice introduction and welcoming me. Highly appreciate it. It's a great pleasure being here today.
It's great to have you here, Marcell. So I'll just hand over straight to you because I know you've got lots to talk through in your presentation.
Perfect. Let's go right into that. And basically today, I would like to cover how will the future supply chain and procurement function look like in times of emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence, post-COVID-19. I really wish I could be with you today and having all these Zoom meetings. I know it's a little bit challenging over time, and I hope we will go through the COVID-19 situation soon, that we have a chance to reconnect and see us again in person. On the other side, probably future keynotes will use holograms to connect a little bit better to the audience. We will see how this will evolve in the near future. Basically today, there are three topics I would like to cover. I want to start with the global trends of supply chain and what is the procurement challenge right now. I also want to deep dive in one topic, which is artificial intelligence, to give a little bit some insights how disruptive technologies will change our daily life, already changing our life, but also impacting the supply chain function. And finally, I want to close my presentation with the digital transformation to implement a bionic supply chain function in the future. So let's go right into that and let's start with the global trends, what we see right now. Basically, I want to highlight four key trends, what we see right now in the market. Basically, it starts with the economic trends. We see the different speed in the world, Asia, Africa, compared to United States, to Europe. We see also a trend like urbanization, the mega cities evolving very fast. Derived from that, basically, the terror trends. Sustainability is a very hot topic right now. We need to include and define the right strategies on what does it mean and how really sustainability will change also our decisions in the future, how we will set up our supply chain, and also how the buying behavior is impacting based on the sustainability aspects, the products we will use in the future. With megacities, there's also a trend related to the infrastructure. We need a different infrastructure in the future. And of course, this will be accompanied by technology trends, emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence, 5G. The infrastructure we need, that it's not only a megacity infrastructure, is also what smart cities will have in the future, meaning all that we can leverage the technology in the best way. The digitalization will help us here to drive that and get the best out of that. And this is also where the term bionic comes from, merging the technology on the one side with us as human beings on the other side and leverages to the best extent for our life. There are some meta trends, demographic shifts, what we see in China, in Europe, for example, with an aging population, Japan, of course. And there's one thing I wished it would be over, the global uncertainty, what we see with some disruptions. It can be a crisis like the pandemic, what we have seen, but also other catastrophes impacting us. When I got Chief Procurement Officer, like Scott introduced myself back in 2011, exactly 10 years back, basically I was confronted also with two crises, what we have seen. Number one was Fukushima. Pretty sure all of you remember what this was about. And also we learned a lot about the transparency needed here on our supplier data to avoid a supply chain disruption. On the other side, there was a flood in Thailand. And we learned a lot about that 70% of the hard disk production was done or is done out of Thailand, which had huge impact on the data centers, the cloud expansion, especially one topic I was focused on as Chief Procurement Officer at SAP. On the current trends and the uncertainty, the pandemic definitely is one still concerning all of us. I wish I could say it is over or we see the end already. The Delta variant is now basically changing the rules, what we have expected by the vaccination. It is a little bit too early to predict how this will end and what the future will bring. On the other side, what we definitely see is that the trade is rebounding, and we see also that the global economy, fortunately, is still going very well. We see a lot of changes, what's happening, a lot of growth in all the different economies. Not all of them equally impacted, but what you see here on this slide is, number one, currently the global trade volume is about 18 trillion, 18 trillion globally. By 2023, the forecast is 1 trillion more, with some changes. You see the green arrows here indicating where we see a growth in the trade volume. For example, United States, North America to Europe, Europe to Africa. Within Asia, we see a lot of increase in the volume. On the other side, we see also, due to the current situation, the trade war and the conflict between United States and China, that the trade between these two countries is slowing down and getting reduced. Whatever it will be, I think it has a huge impact, and it's also impacting us on how we need to plan our supply chain in the future. What is also impacting us, and I mentioned sustainability already. I want to bring you one example related to the picture before, what's happening today, and probably also some thought-provoking example, what I have picked here. You see on the left side a picture with pears grown in Argentina, in Latin America, and packaged in Thailand. I have put a map out here on the right side, what you see, and basically you harvest the pears in Argentina, you ship it to Thailand, and then back to the markets, in this case North America, but could be anywhere in the world. This is also where we see right now there are some changes what will come up due to the fact that CO2 and the carbon emissions what we have is also getting factored in, which is not the case here. I will not say it's a stupid decision what's happening there, because there's a decision based on the economic rules and the considerations of the price. But on the other side, everyone knows that probably it is not really by considering the carbon footprint into this and factoring in the cost on that, that this is so wise to do in the future. So our supply chain will change in the future and might get impacted also with new regulations. What we see, the Paris Agreement, the United States rejoined them, but there might be much more. What we see with European regulations, even China is changing. in multiple aspects right now, focusing more on sustainability. So therefore, this needs to be part of the supply chain of the future. I talked a lot about the term supply chain, but basically, let's also explain it. What is it about? It is plan, source, make, deliver, to keep it very simple. And the sourcing piece is one I'm mainly focusing on, having lots of conversations on risk mitigation, risk management, especially in cases like the Suez Canal, when the Evergreen, got stuck in the middle of the canal. And basically, the trade between Asia and Europe was heavily impacted. That's a main focus area, and also is integrated part of an overall supply chain, what we see, with currently 3 key topics, key priorities, what we see right now. By not a big surprise, to de-risk the supply chain, the first one, to continue reducing the spend for direct as well as for indirect material. And finally, also changing the way on how collaborations between suppliers and businesses, companies is done. Not only focusing on the term supplier, okay, company delivering goods, services, whatever is needed. It is also thinking a little bit more about, are there innovations? Is there anything basically also a supplier can contribute to mitigate risk, like in the case of a pandemic, like we have seen what evolved in a fairly short time frame, when the face mask were very difficult to get, and production was challenged to get the material to the different countries. There are new ways and suppliers popped up to support on that, but there's much more on the innovation side, from business models until new products, which is now being part, especially in automotive, when we look into electric vehicles, what is changing the way how we interact with our suppliers. So derived from that, the supply chain challenge today, as well as the challenge for procurement, is to deal with complexity, to become really a digitally empowered business partner. And why is this important? Because you really want to go to the next level and want to ensure that you can leverage your procurement and your supply chain to the best possible extent. And how to do that? Of course, there's a vast majority of emerging technologies what we see, and every company needs to think about how to best leverage these technologies. And I mentioned the term and explained that briefly about what bionic stands for. The future company will be a bionic company, and this means combining the technology we have on the one side with us as humans, and really ensure that there is a collaboration and the best use of the technology available. And why is that? Of course, it is not just using technology for the purpose of the technology itself. We want to achieve outcomes, and this is what we see here. We want to improve the performance, and we want to deliver business value, and therefore the bionic function is very important. And basically this goes through all different functions within a business, and it is also depending on the available technologies. We see already big technologies available right now: big data, analytics, IoT, edge devices, cloud computing. We have also seen a leapfrog, what's happening in times of the COVID-19 pandemic. Using Zoom calls, I'm now using a tool here to give this presentation to you. As mentioned, I would love to be in front of you, but we have seen also how fast Zoom and other technologies are used, cloud collaboration tools. We see also some technologies which are emerging, like blockchain, robotics, 3D printing, autonomous transportation, artificial intelligence. A subset of that is machine learning and deep learning, as well as augmented and virtual reality. In the future, a little bit far out, nanotechnologies, smart implants, connected neocortex devices, Elon Musk was talking about that, might be also coming up very soon. Whatever the different technologies are, and there are thousands of companies right now looking in particular in artificial intelligence, what really counts is how can we use it for the benefit of our own company, how to use it really to generate value. And the data sources, the big data you use, starting here with the business intelligence, the descriptive data, going to the next level also in using the analytics, using correlations, regressions, portfolio theory, to derive meaningful information out of it. Predictive maintenance is probably a term you're very familiar in the meantime with, but also looking in the next way. And ideally, companies are looking for that, getting prescriptive guidance, really a very clear recommendation what to do next. And artificial intelligence sounds far out. It is already in use on a daily basis. Probably you use Google Maps. You see it here on the left. Probably you will use Uber, Lyft, or another ride-sharing company wherever you are in the world, Grab or Dedica in China. So basically, this is all based already on artificial intelligence. But it's also when we use Siri on our smartphone, for example, when we use Cortana on our Windows system, or Alexa at home. Basically, here we see examples on how artificial intelligence is already in use. Bringing it back to the business side, because this is more the broader use, the consumer-based use I was talking about, but also getting into the business. And the best example for me is logistics as part of supply chain, where you really see that you need to connect and use the information for volume forecast, for predictive capacity utilization. DHL, Transmetrics are using that, but also anticipatory shipping. When we see what's getting sold on Amazon, Walmart is now catching up, Tesco or other companies, going up to a level really having a predictive supply chain and also risk management in place by leveraging the available information in the future. And the shift, what we see here is that the information are really getting embedded in the end-to-end supply chain. You see here the traditional supply chain. A retailer is selling to a private person like you and me. A retailer warehouse is providing everything what retailer needs. Then there's a production company, a factory using their warehouse before they distribute it to the wholesaler, to the retailer warehouses, and the raw materials, how the products are getting created. In the future, we will see a demand-driven supply chain by using the real-time information about what is actually sold right now in a retailer shop. What are the products right now being in demand, and use the information to do a better planning for the warehousing, but also on the production side. And this is happening due to leveraging the technology, leveraging the data, but also using artificial intelligence, machine learning to really derive the needed information to do a better production planning to serve the customers in the best way. And we all know how important it is serving the customers to ensure that they get everything what they need. So let me come to my last topic, what I want to share with you today. And this is the digital transformation. So how to make it happen, how to unleash the value potential for bionic supply chain. And to do that, I think it all starts with a vision. When I became Chief Procurement Officer at SAP, of course, a software company, what SAP is, does not have so much supply chain. It was more on the procurement side, but I learned a lot by hundreds of conversations with CFOs, COOs, Chief Supply Chain Officers, Chief Procurement Officers, that basically for successful digital transformation, starting with a vision is the right approach to do. It might be 2025, what you see here. It might be even a little bit further, 2030, but we all have learned how fast things are changing in the meantime. Therefore, I'm a little bit more conservative here on the outlook and the vision. So probably the next 4 or 5 years out might be something which is realistic to consider. Providing the vision, after that, it is important to realize the full value potential soon. And it starts with the customer, with the stakeholder, stakeholder-centric process is a good starting point. What I have seen from lots of successful digital transformations. Trust me, I've also seen a lot of digital transformations not being so successful. And one reason was not focusing on the right customer or stakeholder to design the process around that. You can analyze it, process mining, analytics, what you get, but basically think about really for whom do you want to establish the best process possible to set in place. The next step is then defining the right organizational model, the target operating model. To that, the structure you need to serve your process, to serve your customers, your stakeholders, and then finally select the right software, the technology. And of course, you might also identify what are potential quick fixes you can come up with to ensure that you provide everything what is needed. To make this a little bit more operational, I also want, and we will share the slides with you, that you see a typical digital journey, what's happening, starting with the vision on the left side, the roadmap, the proof of concept, to the physical proof of concept with the user input, the testing, what is needed, to go for the rollout and really make it a sustainable transformation, what you want to establish to deliver the value. And the value is best delivered, of course, if you see it at the end by a positive business case and also by a successful transformation to bring your supply chain to the next level. And just to recap as the last content slide I want to share with you on the vision of a bionic supply chain function, I think what is important is, on the one side, of course, to embed the available information, might be internal, external information in your supply chain. It is also important that you have real-time visibility. Blockchain might be a technology in the future getting used to ensure, or I would like to say better, digital distributed ledger technology, that you use it really to also make very clear where do you get the products you are processing. Because coming back on the sustainability topic, you need to have the transparency. You need to know from which fields do you get the ingredients to be able to report back to your consumers, to your customers, what are the ingredients and where do they come from. It is also important that leveraging the information and technology for the right decision making. I mentioned the example and compared the traditional supply chain with an integrated, demand-driven supply chain. Why is that? The reason for that is whatever the customer demand is, and we all know the customer is always right, basically we need to react on supply chain fast. We need to react in procurement fast. We need to buy the right product. When you see, oh wow, there's a new demand like for the face mask, where do you get it? How can you really ensure that you are fast? Might be not the best example because it was a demand which came up on a fairly short notice, but there are much more examples where we see also a change in demand. We see now a push for electric cars as one example. How to get the lithium, how to really get the production done, things like that. And therefore, it is very important also to use the data to analyze multiple scenarios, use advanced analytics, use the available intelligence, and therefore the bionic aspect, technology and the humans at the end, us as people taking the decisions at the end, combining that to leverages that in the case of a disruption, we can benefit from the available information to think about very fast alternatives to mitigate the risk by a supply chain disruption, and ideally also bringing the algorithms used for that to the next level. I also want to be a little bit realistic on artificial intelligence. I know I use this term quite often in this presentation, but the intelligence today is still limited. It is not the intelligence we know and understand as human intelligence you and I have. It is more that basically we are using the data, defining algorithms, and basically they have a certain self-learning capability. Sometimes it is absolutely impressive what is possible to do. For example, use it also to connect with people, to schedule meetings, things like that. At Google I/O, we could see a very impressive example. But on the other side, it is also very important still to understand it is still programmed, and basically we need to see how to bring this to the next level to improve the accuracy of these predictions. So the concluding slide on that, the future is ours to define. It is yours to define it for your organization. And digital transformation and the digital technologies, artificial intelligence, might be blockchain, might be other ones, will help and elevate supply chain and the procurement function to the next level. So let's get into that. I hope it was insightful, sharing some thoughts. And yeah, looking very much forward discussing now with you. And I see Scott is back. And yeah, Scott, over to you. And thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, thank you, Marcell. No, that was a great presentation. So much information in there. And as you said, you know, we can share the slides as well with the audience as well. So we'll make sure we do that. And obviously, if anybody wants to ask Marcell some questions directly, we'll come back to that in a second. But Marcell, I had a few questions for you as well. Now, obviously, you talked extensively there about supply chain disruption. How will globalization be impacted by things like COVID, sustainability, and these ongoing trade wars that we're seeing?
Oh, great question, Scott. And I think globalization will definitely continue. And we have seen the 18 trillion today will go up to 19 trillion by 2023 as the latest forecast, what we see. On the other side, what I see on a daily basis also in my conversations with clients, that they are looking also in alternatives, how to include other aspects like carbon footprint, for example, on sustainability, also on the risk mitigation side. If I get everything from Asia, from China, wherever it is, basically, what's happening if the Suez Canal is no longer possible really to pass through in the way we are used to it? And we have seen the backlog really lasted very long, as it took a while to get the evergreen free. By saying that, basically, we see a tendency that companies in a different way into their supply base to really de-risk the way and how they source the products they need for their production. And they do that in a way also by considering regional, local aspects. It has positive impact on sustainability as well, if you don't need to ship it around half the world, but can get it probably a little bit closer by. And one element, what I see will definitely impacting this process is the CO2 price, the carbon price. What we will see might be a tax, might be a certain regulation. Europe is pretty far in the regulation. The United States might follow on that. We will see. It's a little bit too early to predict, but whatever now the final regulation will be, there is a CO2 price to be considered, and with that, and local regional sourcing might have a certain impact that companies are looking on the one side on the risk mitigation aspect, as well as on the other side on the sustainability price. What is the impact, and will take a decision by having a more diverse supply chain in the future and a more diverse supply base to get the needed products from.
Okay, yeah, no, it's a really good point. Now, I'm just conscious of time, but we've got about 1 minute left. So I'm just going to squeeze one more question in. And that's about blockchain. You just mentioned blockchain, and you're talking about like the carbon footprint. I mean, is that the role that you see blockchain playing in future by actually helping to measure that process?
Scott, great question. And the distributed ledger technology, what basically blockchain is helping to really make transparent where do the products come from, and having a ledger which will not get manipulated, provides a certain transparency where I definitely see a use case on that. If this is the right technology, it is still very expensive to set it up. We will see very soon. But basically, I think we need to have the transparency also to ensure that customers have trust and that the companies exactly know where do I get my ingredients from, especially for nutrition, for everything what I consume. People want to know where do they get it from and how do you make it clear. It is today tough to make a differentiation between a sustainable product and on the other side a product which is not sustainable, and therefore the high technology might help on that. I know I could extend this a little bit longer. We are out of time, but Scott, thanks for the question. Really great.
We are out of time, unfortunately, Marcell. So once more, Marcell Vollmer from BCG, thank you very much for the session, and thank you. We'll move on to the next session. Thank you, Marcell. Okay, sorry, we had to cut Marcell off in his prime there, but stay tuned and the next session will be coming right up.